Hello, Gold Derby, and everyone else watching. I'm Daniel Montgomery. I'm here with Charlie Bright, one of our leading Grammy predictors. You actually won the prediction contest predicting the winners from last year, so now we should especially value your input predicting the winners this year, although I must toot my own horn very briefly. In our predictions contest, there was a 12-way tie for the best prediction accuracy, and I was one of those 12. Kind of to my own surprise, because I missed a lot. The highest score was around 73% across those four general field categories. But the tooting of that horn is done. Let's get to these nominations. And first, I want to console you because apparently you're not feeling terribly well. Some kind of stomach bug, I hear.
Well, yeah, it wasn't. Well, before I get to that, I will congratulate you on that. I know we can be very fierce with our predictions and wanting to be right, but when it comes to the Grammys, especially predicting the nominees, it is very tough to do. So if you are in that 12-way tie, you and the 11 other people, major congratulations to you guys. You were obviously somewhat more in tune than I was and a lot of people. Major kudos to you on that. I was feeling a little queasy, just a little bit, and I couldn't figure out was it something wrong with the Chinese food I had for lunch, the beer I was drinking a couple hours ago, or the Grammy nominations that I read this morning. I don't know what's making me feel queasy. It's been quite a day trying to absorb that. And looking at those nominees, really my reaction to it is really you have this panel of people who look at the top, was it 20 or 25 finishers in each of these four general field categories, and then they debate to get it down to 5 or maybe 6 in some cases, but in this case it's 5. And I just go, really? That's what you got it down to? At the expense, Justin Bieber in Album of the Year, at the expense of David Bowie and Radiohead. There's no rock and roll in Album of the Year. I don't know if that's ever happened at the Grammys. I need to go and do some research on this to take a look and see if it's ever happened.
Yeah, and let's go over those nominees right now, just to give our viewers who haven't kept up with the news this morning. The nominees are a couple that everyone pretty much was expecting to be nominated: Adele for 25 and Beyonce for Lemonade. Then we also got Views by Drake. A lot of people were predicting that as well. It was a huge hit. And then the other two were surprises. We got Justin Bieber for Purpose, and it's to one degree it's not the biggest surprise that we've ever been treated to at the Grammys. I mean, a lot of these young stars, when they grow up, or at least their music starts to mature, they get welcomed into this club like Justin Timberlake. He's popular, and this was a big hit album, so it kind of made sense to an extent in terms of what the Grammys sometimes do. The last one was a much bigger surprise because not many people have ever heard of him. Sturgill Simpson for Sailor's Guide to Earth. In fact, this album only has one other nomination. Sturgill Simpson only has one other nomination at these awards, and that's for Best Country Album. So it kind of took everybody by surprise there. And what you're alluding to, of course, is that list of 5 excludes a potential posthumous nomination for David Bowie for Black Star, which was the album he released in January, 2 days before he died. It was critically acclaimed. It's had enough attention going throughout the year that I thought it certainly hadn't been forgotten, and he hadn't been forgotten. Lady Gaga did a tribute to him at last year's Grammys. And then Radiohead for A Moon-Shaped Pool. They've been nominated 3 times before. This would have been their 4th nomination. They're beloved in they're industry veterans. They're in kind of a place in their careers now where they're very establishment-like back, but they've still retained their cool factor and their critical acclaim. So they seemed like a very natural choice. Neither of them got in. And I was alluding to this before we started this hangout. One thing that this points to is a very, very interesting and maybe slightly depressing demographic shift. The oldest nominee in this category is Sturgill Simpson. He's 38. That is the oldest veteran act in this category, is 38. Beyonce is the second oldest. She's 35 or 36. So she's also the grizzled veteran in this category, which is what sadly pop music is lately. And that's one of the things that disappoints me the most about these nominations for Album of the Year, is how I don't want to use the word shameless, because I don't want to say that these nominations don't have merit, but it does feel kind of like they're courting the youth interest. It feels almost like the hiring of Anne Hathaway and James Franco to host the Oscars. It's like, we want the younger demographic to tune in, so we're going to get these people to we're going to invite these people to the party in the hopes that they'll draw a younger crowd, a more desirable crowd of audience members, and it's true that Justin Bieber will attract a certain demographic of the population of the viewing public that David Bowie won't, and Radiohead won't. So that was disappointing to me. It felt a little bit calculated towards youth and popularity.
Yeah, to what you said earlier, calling Beyonce the grizzled veteran, I just had this image of her, like she's sitting on the porch of her beautiful mansion, but she has like a fifth of Jack in her one hand, and she's smoking, and she has an unlit cigarette, and then lights the match on her cheek, going, "These kids today, they don't know anything." For some reason, she's talking like like Billy Bob Thornton or something. What you were saying about that, yeah, it's like they were more concerned about the show and what the show means with ratings. We've seen award show ratings have, I'm pretty sure in general, they've been down over the past couple of years. The Emmys have not been doing as well. I'm not sure about the Oscars. I think they've been holding steady.
The Oscars have been up and down. A lot of times it depends on what's competing that year. If there's an Avatar, it tends to do better. 12 Years a Slave actually was a good year in terms of ratings.
Well, you did have Gravity up, which was a very big box office hit. But yeah, this just feels like more. And the weird thing is why they would feel the need to do that, especially if that was their mindset by including someone like Justin Bieber in there. You already have Adele and Beyonce, who are broadly popular. Beyonce especially is just, she is a queen at this point. She will get millions of people to tune in for, her to watch her eat a club sandwich on live television, and she brings so much. The idea that maybe they actually did just see a true merit within the album, that may be true, but you can't help but think there was more commercial elements that they were looking to get with this nomination.
Yeah, and speaking of broad appeal, I mean, let's talk about Beyonce for a minute. She's nominated 9 times, and she has the most nominations of any artist this year. That's actually not her best tally in one night. Back in 2009, when she was up for I Am Sasha Fierce and Single Ladies, and that year, she was up for 10.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't even the best she's ever done, which is the high bar she set for herself. You mentioned that she has a broad appeal. You're not kidding. She's nominated for pop. She's nominated for R&B. She's nominated for rap sung a performance with Kendrick Lamar. She's nominated for rock.
I know.
So, and that's a deserved nomination. I'm so happy to see that get in. Her collaboration with Jack White from Lemonade. I'm starting to think, if she had entered Daddy Issues for country, she could have gotten in there too, and it would have been deserved there too, because that is straight up country, as much at least as much as a lot of the country pop that often gets in there these days. So she is beloved across the board. She's the most nominated artist. She's starting to look good, I think, for the win. And there's also another theory that I saw someone post in the forums, was that they wanted David Bowie and Radiohead out of the way, potentially to avoid the Beck event of a couple of years ago, to sort of clear a path for Beyonce, which seems, it's hard. If they really wanted to do that, they really should have gotten rid of Adele too. But that might have seemed like a bridge too far for them. But you know, it does seem likely that she wins at this point. Although, one interesting thing that I'd like to point out too is even though she's nominated in all those different fields, she grossly underperformed in R&B. One of the things that surprised me the most, her only nomination in R&B is for Urban Contemporary Performance, or Urban Contemporary Album for Lemonade. Formation isn't nominated for performance. It's not nominated for song. You know, her sister Solange got in for performance, and Beyonce didn't. So it's sort of interesting how she seems dominant in one area, but at the same time, she actually could have earned more than she got, which is saying something about her this year.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, that was the one that really caught me by surprise, was the Rock nomination. And apparently it's deserved. I haven't listened to all of Lemonade, so I guess that puts me on on an island with Donald Trump and whoever the next Unabomber is, although he probably has seen it as well. I think this is really a testament to what pop music is now. It is just like across the spectrum, that it can be almost anything. I mean, we've known country can be pop, or pop can be a little country also, but this is just, you know, and I think this is a signal. It's not the number of nominations, it's the span of them. That's the real key to her, and I agree with you completely. I think she is undoubtedly the front runner right now for this. You know, it's not the number, it's the span, you know, that she is across all these genres, that she is just the queen of music right now, that this is the pathway for it. I'm even tempted to think that she might pull it off in record and song as well. I'm very unsure. I mean, before this, I thought Adele was a slam dunk for both of those, like we talked about earlier. But now I'm very what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not confused, but just unsure of what to make of it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, it reminds me sort of a theory we often have at the Oscars, of the broad-based support, the steak eaters in the below the line categories. If you have a lot of support there, that's going to be kind of like an underreported and under considered kind of a swell of support come from there to push you into Best Picture win. And here you can see that she has the pop community behind her. She has the rock community behind her. She got into rock performance and Radiohead didn't. That's saying something. You know, she has the R&B community you know, behind her. You know, if not as much this year, you know, she's won 20 Grammys and 99% of those have been in R&B field. So we know that they're supportive of her. And in the rap community too. So having that kind of broad-based support, it's hard to imagine who's voting against her. You know, like, is there anyone? And that makes me think, definitely for album of the year, maybe for record and song. It's going to be interesting because, you know, we had a writer who wrote an article with an interesting theory that I think might be onto something, about how Donald Trump, his election could help Beyonce win Album of the Year. And you know, you look back 10 years, Dixie Chicks, George W. Bush, the controversy from that. You know, the Grammys took a stand and said, you know, in defense of the Dixie Chicks, they won Record and Song of the Year for Not Ready to Make Nice. They won Album of the Year for Taking the Long Way. And they've been nominated for Album of the Year several times up to that point. So there was already that history. And Beyonce has the same thing. It's not the same kind of parallel with Trump, but you know, the climate that led to the Trump victory, you know, the racism of it. You know, Beyonce's On Lemonade is very, very unapologetically political, Black Lives Matter, you know, feminist. That kind of sentiment, you know, might lead Grammy voters to say, okay, we're with her.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, it is like sort of like the perfect way to people were railing against, oh, the elites on the coast, and this is now their revenge. It's not something that's going to really affect politics, but it's something there to say we're taking a stand against this, and we're saying, and we want this to be the symbol of our organization and our ceremony for this year in response to all of this. I it is weird, because it's just sort of it's in a way it's coincidental. Whereas with the Dixie Chicks, it was was a direct response to, not just as more towards the fans that had shunned them and the country music industry that really shunned them, because it is a very an industry that has a lot of conservative fans to it that are instrumental to it, and they were just outcasts at that point. And it was very fiercely what's the word I'm looking for? It was fiercely just unapologetic, like you said. And in the aftermath of the Trump victory, now it feels more relevant than ever. Or the opportunity is more appealing than ever to make that sort of statement.
And I just want to give that writer credit. I was searching, for the name of that writer that wrote that, Daniel Bonashansker, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I apologize to him if I am not. He's the one who wrote that article and had that theory that I'm really interested in, and I find very, very fascinating and very potentially true. And what's interesting is that, you saw Taylor Swift win last year and Adele win a couple of years before that. That kind of non-threatening, broad appeal quality might even work against Adele this year. Is she too safe a choice? Especially after Taylor Swift last year, especially after the political year we've had. And she only received 5 nominations this year, although she received just about everything she could have gotten, except for music video. It was the only category I could think of where she was actually kind of snubbed, because that video would have made a lot of sense to be nominated.
And she won for Rolling in the Deep in that category.
And this was a very a widely viewed video, billion plus hits, very, very quickly. I think broke the record for the fastest, to 1 billion views. And it had a real artistic cachet to it with the director Xavier Dolan. And it was nominated for all those VMAs, although she didn't win any. So that can be considered an actual legit snub. But she got everything else. She got Record of the Year, Song of the Year, Album of the Year, Pop Solo, and Pop Album. But it does almost feel like she's almost not an afterthought, but she doesn't have the heat right now that Beyonce has, and she doesn't have that sense of thematic urgency that Lemonade has. So I'm kind of wondering, the way you said, is Adele suddenly vulnerable for record and song, not just album? And I wonder that too. I think, we saw Beyonce pull off a surprise for Single Ladies for Song of the Year in 2009, which is to date the only general field category she's ever won. And that's not your typical Song of the Year winner. It's very dance pop kind of an anthem, and they usually go to the introspective singer-songwriter like John Mayer and Ed Sheeran in Song of the Year. So that shows how much how much power Beyonce can have when she's hitting it on firing on all cylinders. So it will be very interesting. I do think it's going to be a 2-artist race in every single one of those 3 categories. I can't think of who gets in their way in either of those.
Yeah, I was jokingly saying that this kind of makes me want a Sturgill Simpson upset, just out of nowhere. I want him, but I don't just want an upset. It's like I kind of, if he wins, I want him to win like Arcade Fire did. I want him to lose country album, but then win album of the year. So Um,
And that's very possible. You know, he's nominated for a country album and album of the year, of course. He's the only country album nominated for album of the year, which usually signals, you know, if it's their, you know, one of the best albums of the year, it's the best in its genre. But he doesn't have any other support, even in the country field. He doesn't have a country performance nomination or a country songwriting nomination. So, you know, I mean, this is a case where the blue ribbon panel certainly, you know, I would say undoubtedly helped him out, you know, getting him into that top five. And who knows if he was the only country artist they were considering for an album of the year nomination that made the, you know, the runoff, you know, for where they were considering, you know, maybe Maren Morris was in there somewhere in their top 20, you know, and that's the kind of thing that, you know, we could see, because she's ran the field. She's nominated for Best New Artist. We'll talk about that in a minute. And she's nominated for Country Performance for My Church, Country Song for My Church, and Country Album for Hero. So we know she has a lot of support in the country field, you know, not just for Album of the Year. I worry a little bit that Sturgill Simpson, for his sake, you know, will be sort of like this year's Sarah Bareilles, where she gets that Album of the Year nomination, kind of surprises, doesn't have a lot of support elsewhere, and just doesn't win anything. You know, although Sarah Bareilles has a chance too, we can talk about that also. But do you think Sturgill could, you know, he's only got 2 chances, so a shutout isn't like a huge, wouldn't be a huge shocker. But do you think he's at risk of that?
You know, at the Grammys, I just got to say, when it comes to this, anything is possible. You know, that Arcade Fire win in 2010 is probably the biggest banner of anything is really possible at the Grammys. That and the Herbie Hancock win. You know, sometimes you just have these wins come out of nowhere, even when they don't make sense at all. I mean, with Arcade Fire, you had the critical acclaim there, but still, it was like they lost the only other category they were nominated in. They're this little indie band going up against all these other things. How does this happen? You know, I wouldn't put anything past them, but it will be if anyone else but Beyonce wins this will be labeled an even bigger stunner than 2 or 3 years ago when she lost to Beck in in this category.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think it would be the hugest upset if Adele wins again. You know, it'd be just sort of like kind of a repeat of what happened last year. Taylor Swift winning again after winning just a few years earlier. So I don't think that would be the hugest surprise. But really, if anyone else in that category did it, it would be kind of stunningly unlikely. You know, just like, you know, for an artist as young as you know. For someone like Justin Bieber to win, that's kind of a really an uncommon kind of victory. For a country album to win, it's been a while. For a rap album to win, it's been a while. You know, so you know, everyone is coming in this at a disadvantage except for, I'd say, Beyonce and Adele.
Hear me out on this one though. With Justin Bieber, if Justin Bieber wins Album of the Year, I think the Beyonce fans, especially her gay fans, and I mean the super gay, super Beyonce fans, get so angry that they literally rip him limb from limb, and we erase Justin Bieber from the pop landscape, and everyone's happy.
That sounds interesting. I think what we're more likely to see is if Justin Bieber wins Album of the Year, Jill Stein will be petitioning for a recount. It will happen, and Beyonce will, you know, from the sidelines say, yes, we are supporting Jill Stein's efforts, but we're not getting.
I'm sending Jay-Z to monitor it.
If she trusts him now. I mean, you know, listen to "Don't Hurt Yourself," that rock song that she's nominated for, and yeah, you know, she might send another envoy or conciliary or whatever she would call it in her organization. But yeah, I mean, a Bieber. It's interesting, you know. Just looking at the American Music Awards, even the American Music Awards picked Ariana Grande instead of Bieber. You know, if the Grammys went with Bieber, it would be kind of stunning.
Yeah, yeah, that would be the upset of all upsets, and at least I'll be glad Beck's name will be pretty cleared because people will be going, really that?
Yeah, and it's interesting to think of the demographic skew because you know, Ariana Grande is another young artist, but I thought Justin Bieber had Artist of the Year at the AMAs in the bag. And then at the MTV Video Music Awards, that's another fan voted award. You know, online fanboys and fangirls can get online and vote for their favorites, and you know, those fan bases come into play. Beyonce swept there, and Justin Bieber didn't really make an impact. So, you know, the fact that it's the Grammys, it's the establishment, it's the industry itself saying, you know what, this guy is made one of the top 5 best albums of the year. It's a little bit unusual.
You know, before we move on to any other category, I just, you know, it's something else I was thinking about was, you know, we're in December now, and we're coming up on where you go to websites and you see countdowns of the best of the year and, you know, what made this year so great. There have been a lot of articles about how 2016 has been awful. I mean, for, you know, pinkos like, you know, you and me, you know, the election of Donald Trump is one thing. Um, to our conservative viewers out there. But and you also just look at all the people that have passed away this year. You know, just January alone, you had David Bowie and Alan Rickman. Uh, you know, you had Prince, all these other people passing away, and you know, people are like, 2016 kind of just sucks with very few bright spots. That's what a lot of these general field nominees kind of feels like. You know, it really is a reflection of 2016.
I think it's a little better than that.
I'll grant you that
Yeah,
is very morbid. That is very morbid, and we should be more positive oriented.
Justin's you know, chief songwriter wasn't a white supremacist Breitbart owner. So I'm still going to call this a bright side. Um, but moving on from album of the year, one thing that we talked about in a previous video, and I don't think we actually got any more clarity on now that we have the nominees, is best new artist. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I got 3 out of the 5 of these correct. I couldn't have gotten one because one of them I had not entered into the prediction center. That's how far out from left field, at least for me, it was. I did not see it coming, and I did not have that as a choice in the prediction center, and that's Anderson .Paak. You know, he's joined in this category by the Chainsmokers, Chance the Rapper, Maren Morrison, Kelsey Ballerini. I don't think any of those other ones are hugely surprising. But none of them have any other support in the general field, which makes this very, very hard to game out. Just like last year when the same thing happened, you know, a lot of people were split between James Bay, who had some support in the rock categories, and Sam Hunt, who had some support in country, and Meghan Trainor, who ended up winning, had no other nominations at all. So you know, we're in kind of the same boat. We don't have anything to really go on. I mean, we do have Chance the Rapper, who has the most nominations of any artist in this category. He's got 7. But, you know, I mean, if you look at those rap nominations between, you know, collaborations, featured artists, 50 songwriters on some of these songs, you know, it's not hard to rack up a lot of nominations in the rap field relative to, say, country or pop, or, you know, where it's basically you get in once maybe. And so, you know, I think Chance the Rapper looks strong, but there's a bias against rap in this category historically. Maren Morris got a lot of support in the country field, but I did not expect them to nominate 2 country female artists at once, and that could hurt her if they split the vote. And so that's making me look very closely at the Chainsmokers.
Mm-hmm.
Big hit makers. They got nominations for pop, do a group, I believe, maybe one other. They're sort of the apple in the bag of oranges in the sense that, you know, if they don't like rap, and if the country female artists cancel each other out, they're hit makers. Maybe they come in surprise. Maybe they're sort of at Esperanza Spalding this year, because we don't see a lot of EDM dance music artists winning this category either. So where are you leaning in this category? Because I'm split between the three: Chance, Chainsmokers, and Maren Morris.
Oh man, it's so. This is just There's really no clarity for me. I tend to think along. Like you said, you look at canceling each other out. Kelsey Ballerini and Maren Morris, both country. Anderson .Paak and Chance the Rapper, both R&B, hip hop, urban, soul music. That leaves the Chainsmokers. I think they could stand a very good chance, but I'd still kind of put Chance the Rapper out front. But this is a really tough one, and I'm not sure where things break on this one.
It's a little encouraging, on his front, that he would not have been eligible for Grammys ever before, because of they previously had a rule that streaming only music wasn't eligible, and this year they changed that.
Is that Anderson .Paak you're talking about?
No, a Chance the Rapper.
Oh, okay.
And that helped him get in here. Obviously, if they hadn't changed that rule, he wouldn't have been eligible. And now he's nominated 7 times. And so maybe that's encouraging. Maybe they were looking ahead at him specifically, or I'm sure they were also looking at people like Beyonce, who did the visual album, and people like Frank Ocean, who had his own unique release, though he didn't end up submitting for consideration anywhere. So that could be a sign that they were looking out for him in a sense.
And one other thing that's really surprising here, Lucas Graham is not in here, yet they got in for record and song of the year. It is one of those weird things that just happens sometimes. And they were eligible, they were submitted, but they still didn't make it in this one, yet they were still good enough to be nominated there. And the weird thing is if they were in the Best New Artist category, boom, there's your alternative to Chance the Rapper. In record and song of the year, there you go.
Yeah, if they had gotten in Best New Artist, they're the winner. That's just an easy one. They nominated for record, nominated for song of the year.
Chance the Rapper winning would actually be an upset in those circumstances.
Yeah, it's very interesting. This has happened before. I'm looking up the release date of their album now to see if that album was eligible. But what's interesting is that when it's happened before, it's because the artist, their debut album hadn't come out yet. Meghan Trainor, when she was nominated for All About That Bass, record and song, that album didn't come out until the following eligibility period, and then she was nominated for Best New Artist, and she won. Hozier, Take Me to Church, Song of the Year nomination before his debut album was released. The next year he was eligible for Best New Artist, although we know that didn't work out too well for him.
Yeah, we all thought he was going to win.
Ed Sheeran, The A-Team, his first writing nomination for Song of the Year. The next year his debut album was eligible, and he was nominated for Best New Artist. So I'm wondering if that might have happened to Lucas Graham, but I'm doing a quick wiki of their discography. Because I do my research.
Thoroughly prepared. It's a very we were kind of lost before this, and we're still kind of lost on this one. It's a very tough one to try to forecast. And we kind of just have Chance the Rapper in there by default for I guess most of us do.
Yeah, it looks like Lucas Graham had an album. They've had a couple of albums out. One was in 2002 and one was in 2015. I don't know if either of those would qualify as major label debuts. So it's hard to tell with that one. Maybe we'll see them next year.
Well, remember Shelby Lynn, when she won the Best New Artist field, she infamously said, it's only taken me 15 years to get here, So, because of those rules regarding the labels and the size of the labels and the scope of the release. So, it's it's kind of tough, but you got to think, you know, they're in this, and they were eligible. We had them in our prediction center. So, you know, the idea that, you know, they get nominated in, you know, record and song, but somehow miss out on Best New Artist is very, very strange.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. You know, I want to take a look back at a record and song of the year. We haven't talked too much about those except for Hello and Formation. Um, and we talked about this when we talked about record and song of the year, the overlap that we would see between these categories. This year we had a significant overlap. We had 3 out of the 5, and that's Formation, Hello by Adele, and 7 Years by Lucas Graham. The 2 ones that split, record of the year, not surprising. We got Work, Rihanna and Drake. That was a huge, you know, kind of song of the summer size hit, which often get in and don't win. So I wouldn't hold out for hope for that one. And then we got Stressed Out by 21 Pilots. You know, the kind of rock nominee that we sometimes get in there. Reminds me a bit of Radioactive by Imagine Dragons got into record of the year a few years ago. And those last 2 songs, Work and Stressed Out, didn't get in for song of the year. Song of the year, we've got Love Yourself by Justin Bieber, and actually Ed Sheeran is a co-writer on that song, so that makes even more sense. Although that one I saw coming. That one made perfect sense to me. I'm like, okay, Love Yourself, that's a reasonable Song of the Year nominee. I would not have said the same thing about Album of the Year for Purpose. And then the other Song of the Year nominee is, you know, speaking of the A-Team, speaking of Take Me to Church, you know, and also talking about Adorn by Miguel. Like there seems to always be one that no one is, like, it's not on anyone's radar for a nomination in the general field. And that's I Took a Pill in Ibiza by Mike Posner. I'll admit, in addition to Anderson .Paak, this was one that was not in our prediction center. You know, and no one asked me to put it in there. I'll defend myself in that sense. You know, if anyone had said, "Hey, have you thought about I Took a Pill in Ibiza?" It might have a shot in there. I would have added it. But yeah, this was a surprise to me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complete surprise. I don't, you know, I don't really know what to say about it. You know, when I saw the overlap of 3 in each, that there was 3 overlapping nominees, that's usually your standard. You know, it's usually 3, maybe 4 out of the 5 overlap. But yeah, that this was this just is like, I don't know what to make of it. And plus, you know, if it's not, you know, Formation or Hello, I feel like when it comes to predicting this, I feel like I should be saying, who are you and why should I give a damn?
Well, Mike Posner is relatively new as well. He's 28, so by Grammy standards, middle aged. He's in the Adele range age wise. You know, so you know I believe he was nominated for an MTV Video Music Award for I Took a Pill in Ibiza. Yeah, I'll admit, was not on my radar, and it's always going to happen. I always look at the prediction center at the Gold Derby, especially at the Grammys, where we don't get, you know, the Grammys are a little bit cagey, to you know, to put it mildly, about their submissions and their process. But yeah, this was not on my radar.
Yeah.
I fully cop to that.
Wow. I'm like, the name was familiar, but I'm just like, I don't really know, you know?
And I will say this much, you know, I got 4 out of the 5 nominees correct in one category, and it was Song of the Year.
That is, again, major
one.
Yeah, major congratulations on that. That is truly, that is something to really be proud of, because, you know, most of the time we're just guessing, and if you could get the right ones in there, man, you need to be Donald Trump's astrologer or something like that. You know, that's what you need to get going there.
I'll pass on that position. You know, unlike Ben Carson, I know I don't have the requisite experience to take a cabinet job and would then not take a cabinet job. So even Secretary of Astrology, I feel like that's a little bit outside of my experience level.
Yeah, and I just was looking up Mike Posner. He's in my area. He's going to be in Silver Spring tomorrow night, performing at the Fillmore. Were there any other, what other things kind of took you by surprise or made you say, okay, that's a category I'm looking forward to?
I'm always looking forward to something interesting, kind of off the beaten path. I'm looking at things like spoken word and things like musical theater album, things where interesting things can happen that people aren't necessarily all talking about. So for instance, you've got Amy Schumer is nominated twice this year. She's nominated for spoken word for The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo, and she's nominated for comedy album. Comedy album is looking fairly strong this year in the sense that there's no one obvious. It usually goes to the biggest star. Like Louis C.K. when he's in there, or that kind of everyone kind of rallies around them. But this year you've got Amy Schumer in there, you've got Tig Notaro in there, you've got Patton Oswalt, who just won the Emmy for Best of Variety Special Writing. You've got Margaret Cho again, you've got David Cross. So it's kind of hard to see where to go. I would sort of guess either Schumer or Oswalt would be the likeliest to win there, but that's interesting to me. And spoken word album is interesting because there are musicians in there, and musicians in spoken word album, sometimes they have an advantage. You've got Patti Smith and Elvis Costello in there, so I might be tempted to predict one of them there. Then you've got Carol Burnett. I mean, that's kind of exciting to see. So I like these categories where people you wouldn't think of as who aren't Beyonce. Obviously, she's going to win a bunch of Grammys, by, she wakes up in the morning and yawns and she wins best R&B performance. So those sorts of things are interesting. And I think I alluded to it earlier. Sarah Bareilles for Waitress, she's nominated for Best Musical Theater Album. And the best thing that could have possibly happened to her, and we had another writer address this, Amanda Spears, the best thing that could have ever happened to her is the differing eligibility periods for the Tonys and the Grammys, which mean that Hamilton already won this category last year, so it's out. Hamilton, of course, ran roughshod over the Tonys. Sarah Bareilles didn't have a chance there. Now we're on Sarah Bareilles' home turf. And she's never won a Grammy, but she's an established musician. She's a past Album of the Year nominee. So I'm really rooting for her to finally win her first Grammy there.
Yeah, and to what you were saying, what you were talking about earlier first, the spoken word album categories, I love those so much because you never know who's going to pop up in there. And the best, I was talking about this with some friends actually last week at trivia, just last week. I was telling them about some of the crazy things that have, some of the crazy people that have, or not crazy people, but crazy instances of people you wouldn't expect winning Grammys. And the one that delighted my friends to no end was that Nobel Peace Prize laureate Mikhail Gorbachev is a Grammy winner for Best Children's Spoken Word Album. That category no longer exists, but he's a Grammy winner for that. It was him, Sophia Loren, and Bill Clinton reading a Peter and the Wolf book. And the captain of our trivia team, I actually found pictures of Gorbachev when he received the Grammy and him like holding this Grammy, and it like melted my friend's heart. He thought it was the greatest picture he'd ever seen. And that's why I do love these categories. The comedy album category, I think, is just really, it's hard to predict. There's no obvious frontrunner, but also all 5 nominees are really strong. Even David Cross, who you might think, okay, he's kind of the one that maybe just might be by the wayside. The reviews for the album were very, very strong, and the tour that he went on, that the material came from, were very strong and very well reviewed. I don't think anyone in that category, in the comedy category, would surprise me. I'm personally, of course, I'm always rooting for Patton Oswalt because I adore him so much. But I think, even if you have 2 frontrunners like Schumer and Oswalt, you have that. Who's the spoiler? Is it Tig Notaro? Is it Margaret Cho, who's never won a Grammy? She's been nominated for several of her albums. And if she were to win her first Grammy, I would be delighted to no end because I adore her so much. Margaret Cho, if you're watching, please do an interview with us. We love you so much. Um, uh, and a musical theater album, yeah. I mean, to me, I'm looking at that those nominees, and there is no standout. However, uh, I hate to somewhat cast some, I don't want to rain, but I may cast some clouds. The one to watch out in musical theater album to me is The Color Purple. To watch out for that one. I mean, I remember watching that performance at the Tony Awards, and I thought the Tony Awards was all right this year, but that performance with Cynthia Erivo, right? That's how you pronounce, yeah, Erivo. Um, Even though it was like 3 minutes, I was just like blown away. Like I felt like my glasses were going to shatter because I was so amazed at what I saw. Um, the one I would watch out for, but I would also love to see Sarah Bareilles take home her first Grammy.
And not just Cynthia Erivo, Jennifer Hudson is a principal soloist nominated for The Color Purple. So speaking of people who have a Grammy track record already, she's a Grammy winner. So it's kind of tricky to look at that one, and I'm still hoping for Sarah Bareilles, but she's got tough competition, and a kind of an unlikely Grammy darling, Steve Martin and Edie Brickell for Bright Star. Martin is a multiple Grammy-winning artist,
and not just on the comedy side. He's won in bluegrass as well.
He's a Grammy-winning musician, and deservedly so. He's quite a musician, so it's really kind of I really got to think it's between those three.
The other one that's really interesting in that category is someone who's won for this exact work just a couple of years ago. That's Cyndi Lauper. Now, I didn't know this until very recently. The original soundtrack to Kinky Boots, the original Broadway soundtrack, she had only won one Grammy, and that was for Best New Artist back in, what was it, 84, 85, something like that. Since then, she had never won a Grammy until the Kinky Boots album. So she finally has her second Grammy. Now she might win a third for the as a producer of the album, as for the West End recording of it. And I just think that's really funny. It's like back in the 70s, I think it was 1970, the original London cast album of Jesus Christ Superstar was nominated for Album of the Year. The very following year, the Broadway soundtrack album of Jesus Christ Superstar was nominated for Album of the Year. So I think this is a very funny thing, although in musical theater album, you get revivals all the time, so that's kind of understandable. But still, the original runs of both of the in both New York and London have gotten nominated here. That's quite something.
So what we're basically, I think we're saying is that Sarah Bareilles, if this doesn't work out, get thee to London immediately. And whoever wins this category, if it's not Sarah Bareilles for Waitress, for instance, if it's The Color Purple, then cast Cynthia Erivo as your lead. She's already British, so you're good. Cynthia Erivo is the star of your British production of Waitress, and you're set.
And not to leave anything out, but imagine if Fiddler on the Roof wins. I know a lot of people in New York will be happy that Danny Burstein finally has a trophy. It may not be a Tony. Hell, it's probably better than a Tony. I think it's worth more. So, that would be a wonderful piece of poetic justice. Maybe not justice, but, wonderful happenstance. If he were, he's been nominated for 5 or 6 Tonys. He's never won. And if he were to win as the principal soloist for Fiddler on the Roof, that would be amazing. And I know a lot of people in New York would be smiling about that.
It's interesting. I think of the different the core 4 showbiz awards, the EGOT prizes, Emmy, Oscar, Grammy, Tony, and I sort of rank them in my head. When you consider who's getting close to EGOT. For instance, if you're someone like Cynthia Nixon, who has 3 out of the 4, but the one she's missing is the Oscar. That's the hardest one to get. And not because your work has to be so much better to get it, but just because the circumstances of getting to the Oscar, getting into the Oscar, conversation and getting onto the Oscar stage is so much more daunting. Tony is hard to get because not everyone is equipped to do theater. Especially if you're an actor. I mean, if you're a musician, then you have an easier road. Potentially with a score. So that's sort of a tricky one. Emmy and Grammy. If you're missing one of those and you have all the others, you have no excuse not to EGOT. They're both so doable.
Yeah.
Because there are so many more categories at both of those events, so many more avenues, to get them. Justin Timberlake has multiple Grammys for guest acting and songwriting. Musicians, can win everything. Actors can win for a spoken word album. Helen Mirren is a Grammy away from an EGOT. Her voice, read a book. I mean, you've got it's just done. Just
now, Helen, if you're listening to this, we're not saying that you're uneducated or not well versed. We're saying do an audiobook. We love you so much.
Read a book is specifically in a recording studio. Is what
I just love the way you said that. It's like she's somehow uncultured.
Yes, Helen Mirren makes me look like Donald Trump, in terms of how that big a buffoon. But yeah, read a book in a recording studio. I just realized that over the course of this slugfest, we're going to get so many thumbs downs from Trump supporters who stumble upon this. But I will, and Bieber supporters. Oh goodness, we're screwed.
Oh yeah. That I'll wear. Both of those I will wear as a badge of honor.
and Bieber Trump supporters. I'm not going to read the comments on this one. I appreciate any positive feedback that we do get, but I probably will not try and find it through YouTube comments.
Now
we traveled far afield.
One other category that I think is really interesting, and I think it's a tough category, is the alternative music field. When I was looking at the nominees this morning, I was scrolling through the categories as they're numbered, so just scrolling through, and I got to rock album, and I was like, David Bowie's not even in there? What's wrong with this? And then I got to alternative album, and he was submitted in there. This is a very tough category. Moonshaped Pool and Black Star were like the standouts were two of the big standouts of the year. So where they're gonna, I'm wondering, is one really favored, or are they at such an equal level? Can there be a spoiler? And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking the spoiler, if there is one, is Bon Iver, with 22 a Million, which has been getting stellar reviews.
And it came out much more recently than the others. It came out right at the tail end of the eligibility period, so it's still fresh in minds. Looking at this category, I mean, it's not always a reliable barometer, but I tend to look at, okay, how much support do they have elsewhere? Radiohead, I'm not going to count them out, because they're Radiohead. But they're not as strong when they're not an Album of the Year nominee. They've won this category a lot, but they have lost it a lot too. So I wouldn't think they're necessarily they're vulnerable, and their only other nomination is for rock song, which indicates, as I mentioned earlier, even Beyonce beat them to a rock performance nomination. So I'm not sure how much support they have this year. I would give David Bowie the edge there because he has a rock performance, he has rock song, he has I think engineered album or one of those technical awards. So I think that has more support. I'm also kind of looking at PJ Harvey as a potential spoiler. I remember last year or the year before, this category has, historically been extremely male. And then a year or two ago, St. Vincent surprised here. And she didn't have that much support in other categories, but she still managed to win alternative album. So PJ Harvey could do it too.
Yeah, she's been nominated so many times. Has she ever won a Grammy? I don't think she has.
I'm gonna pretend I already know this and not am looking it up right now. But so I'm just going to talk my way into what I clearly already know. That's the wrong link. There. So PJ Harvey. Let's talk about her illustrious career and scrolling.
Well, yeah, you're saying, yeah, this has been a tough category for women. Bjork has been nominated in this so many times, still has never won. She's never won a Grammy, period, which is amazing to me because Bjork is just awesome. Her music is amazing. You would think that, she would come out on top, but, with each album is amazingly well reviewed. Most of them are very, very well reviewed, that she would get there. It's just very weird that, she's never won it. And I don't think PJ Harvey has, even though she is a darling of this category.
She has not. I can confirm that.
Yeah.
She's been nominated in this category 1, 2, 3. This is her 4th nomination in this category. She was also nominated for Best Rock Album once, so she has 5 album nominations, and she hasn't won. And she also has a couple of female rock vocal performance back when rock performance was separated by gender. So yeah, she's waiting for hers. This is actually her first nomination in 12 years.
Yeah, it has been a while for her. So yeah, this is a really interesting category. I am kind of with you. When I saw, I missed this. I missed this when I was initially viewing the nominees. That Bowie is in that very, by us Grammy nerds, that very watched category of the best engineered album. That's the one that, Daft Punk won this the same year they won Album of the Year. Beck won this infamously that year that he won Album of the Year.
Alabama Shakes won it last year, and they led me astray. I was predicting them for Album of the Year last year, so it's not foolproof.
Yeah, but for a subgenre category, it's definitely very telling, and it's definitely very promising. So I definitely think that that'll be a big factor, and I think probably Bowie's ahead in this category.
So any final thoughts or observations or wailing or gnashing of teeth about these nominations?
Oh, I've had enough time to do plenty of that. I'm just looking at some of these other nominees. Ron Howard's a Grammy nominee now for his Beatles documentary that aired on Hulu. That's probably another thing that probably helped. That that they're glad they're probably including streaming in this now. I don't know if that category was affected by it. I'm just we'll see what happens. I think it's pretty clear cut. We still got some interesting categories, and hopefully the performances are good at this year's Grammys. You never know what you're going to get. There's probably going to be. We had a Bowie tribute last year. We'll probably get a tribute to Prince. And I hope for a good show and something that. And one other nomination that I thought was really fun was in country group or duo or group performance. Pentatonix and Dolly Parton were nominated for their version of Jolene. That just made me smile.
Yeah, music is kind of there are no boundaries. In the same way, like the Emmys are struggling. What's a drama? What's a comedy? What's a series? And what's a miniseries? Music. Those musical boundaries are sort of breaking down too, which is actually kind of nice. Although I will mention very briefly, we've talked about people who have been nominated over and over again and never won. Dierks Bentley flies under the radar, but because he flies under the radar, he's nominated with Elle King for Different for Girls, for pop duo or for country duo or group. He is one of the top 10 most nominated artists at the Grammys without a single win. It's the kind of thing that people don't necessarily notice because, again, he's been around for a while. He's been nominated a lot, but he seems like someone who would have won by now. But he just has not had that moment yet. So that could be his moment. That category looks very winnable. So best of luck to him.
Yeah, back off, Keith Urban.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Keith Urban has won his Grammy or two.
And he has Nicole's Oscar to help him out too, so he can just hold that if he gets lonely at night. just
cradling Nicole Kidman's Oscar. Or cradling circling another one. Nicole Kidman could you know, is a contender again this year, but that's
Got several Golden Globes for him to work with also.
I'll let that one sit there. So thank you, Charlie, for joining me, and we will hopefully reconvene at some point in the future. The Prediction Center at Gold Derby is already open with the top 4 general field categories to predict. There will be more categories added, many more categories added in the coming weeks, but for now, record, album, song of the year, best new artist, you can start predicting those now. We've already got well over 100 people making their predictions after just like, you know, a few hours. So go in there, make your predictions, get us started with our odds to let us know who we should be thinking are coming ahead in this race. And we will see you again soon.